My name is Shujaul MUlk Khan. I came from Pakistan. I work as assistant professor in Department of Plant Sciences, Quaid-e-Azam University, Islamabad. My specialization is plant ecology and conservation. I did my PhD in the University of Leicester, following by a postdoctorate study in the same department and same university in Leicester, UK. Actually, I came to plant ecology and conservation because I was quite curious to know about the plants and environment relationship, that how the environment shape plants in a particular area. My main focus was during PhD on the plants of Himalayas, but at the same time, while searching for the natural cause of occurrence of plants, I came to know that different type of cultures in Western Himalayas shape the plants as well. The abundance of plants, the occurrence of plants, the endangerment of plants, and that took me to the second step of my interest, and I found it very interesting that these are not only the natural drivers which shape the natural ecosystems and plants of a region, but actually these are twofold stories. One are the natural drivers that shape the plants of an area, and second is the culture. And in turn, these plants also shape different cultures. For example, if an area have one sort of plants and the same may disappear due to certain reason, maybe climate change or cultural drivers, then the one type of area develop then later on one sort of culture, and the another area is another type of culture. So I can simply say that plants and environment are actually interdependent on each other. It's the basic phenomena, but at the same time, the ecosystem of a region depend upon the culture of a region, and the culture of a region depend upon the ecosystem of a region. Sorry. So ecosystem of a region is dependent on the culture, because the culture depend upon the ecosystem, because the ecosystem provide different services to the culture or to the tradition and to the people of the area. So this is something interdependent process, and I am very interested to develop the causes and the reasons of the ecosystem dependence on culture and the cultural dependence on natural ecosystems. Yes. Well, initially I would link my research interest to my family background as well, because I born in a village at a countryside. For example, my home is at 1900 meter at sea level in the Himalayas. So I know much better about the mountains, the mountain cultures and the mountain plants rather than a city boy know. So I claim that I know much better than the city people. And due to my childhood and my life as a youngster, that took me to the interest, the research interest, to know about the nature and environment relationship and the dependence of people on nature and the dependence of nature on people. And then to fulfill my that interest, I went to higher studies in my PhD to know the reasons about these relationships, and it helped me a lot, I can say. Actually, I'm a part of Pashtoon culture, a Pathan culture, and that culture has its own unique values and traditions. And during my research interest, it helped me a lot. These traditions and those customs of my society actually helped me a lot to how to analyze the nature in the light of my culture. So it helped me a lot during this whole journey of my academic career. And academically, we got a lot of benefit from this, my close ties to my tradition. And we explored the vegetation of an Himalayan valley in a very interesting way. Initially, I did the ecological work. I did some quantification of vegetation, and later on I realized that the people are using these plants in one way or the other for food, for medicine, for other aesthetic values and cultural values. And I then did some questionnaire data collection, and I collected a lot of questionnaires in that valley in the second part of my data. And what was unique to my, specific to my studies in PhD and postdoctorate, that I link both the quantification data of vegetation to the use data of the vegetation of the area. And it gave me very good results. For example, we found out some risks involved due to this huge anthropogenic pressure on the local vegetation, and we were able to design then some conservation measures and to assign some conservation criteria to those vegetation. And by doing so, we were also able to educate the local community and by saying them that okay, all these plants are actually your own hands and feet, and if we conserve these plants, these will conserve your culture. And we have brought a lot of awareness in the local community in that context as well. And our work is still continue. We are trying to bring some awareness in the local community to conserve the local resources, to grow those slow foods, and to promote organic food, and actually promoting organic food and those slow foods and protecting those vegetation and local fauna and flora is actually conserving the culture of the area. Otherwise, the culture may diminish due to this fast foods approach of the world and due to this modernization. So we are working on different angles. And apart from the things which I discussed, for example, we have a lot of biodiversity, we have cultural diversity, and specifically linking all those biodiversity and cultural diversity. This was something related to my academic career. But apart from that, we have a lot of cultural diversity, so many languages. For example, in Pakistan, we have more than 70 different languages. But in the northern areas, we have, in each valley, we have different dialects and different languages. Due to the mountain barriers, they have developed different languages. And we have different cultures. For example, here I will quote few of the examples of our culture. For example, and few of those examples as well, which are no more exist in our culture, but those were quite beautiful. For example, we have at the last few decades, before 2000, before 1990s, I think, we were having a culture to bring bride in a beautiful decorated box-like structure, to put the bride date in the box, to bring, and the 4 different people just put the box on their shoulder and to bring it to the bridegroom house. And the rest of the people, 400 to 500 and sometime more, they used to go behind those carrying box and having some drums and some musical instruments to play music, to make dance and something like that. But slowly and gradually this culture is disappearing. So we have to preserve this. A second example, for example, during the crop cutting, we were having some custom to play music. Similarly, for example, the people in my area when I was child, they used to bring the big wooden beams for constructing houses and something like that, and they used to play some musical instruments, and some people used to dance. And how they dance, for example, a big beam, for example, if I mention its size, for example, a long beam of, let's say, 10 meter and 1.5 meter thick, like 1.5 feet square beam. More or less 100 people used to put it on the shoulder to take it to the house, and 1 or 2 person in those moving beam on the shoulder of the people, they just stand on the beam and dance. So this was something unique culture. So but it's slowly and gradually disappearing. Another culture, cultural thing or tradition, you can say, we have even today, but it's also disappearing slowly and gradually. For example, if any guest come to our house, so our elders usually say to their younger to just give massage to him, for example, to touch his body so that he get some relaxation and rest. This culture is disappearing due to the construction of a lot of roads and small roads to the villages. But when there was no road to those villages and the people used to go by feet, used to bring luggage by donkeys, mules and horses. So this was a quite common custom. If guests come to someone's house, if for example guests come to my house, my father used to say me, okay, guest is here, you can give him massage. And usually this massage is given by children to their elders. For example, the male teenager to male elders, and the female teenager to female elders, and so on. But in case of relatives, if relative come to our house, so our people used to, irrespective of the gender, the girl can give massage to the elder male, and the boy can give massage to the elder lady, and it was very common. And I was talking to Professor Peroni yesterday that one thing I should mention, I think, that for example the child abuse, it is, I think, very common in modern society, because we don't have that culture very common now. Because in that culture, the people were touching each other and they were not thinking negative things. So I think the point which I want to make is that hugging each other, touching each other in a continuity or quite often, it decreased that sense of negativity or thinking negative. And it was very positive cultures in the past. My father used to say that they were living together with second cousins. They were not teenagers, even 18, 20 years of age, and they were sleeping together, girls and boys, second cousins, because of the big houses, the giant families, but they never thought something negative. But in today's world, you can see that even the children have different rooms, the sister and brother have different rooms, and no one can keep them in a single room. So I think some of the cultural things were extremely positive, and they were playing very positive role in the society. But this modernization, or sometimes people say it westernization, And but more correctly, this globalization is bringing some problem because everyone has its own personal space, and due to this personal space, ultimately human is human. So the brain is working then in a giant way while we are separating people from each other. And then when we separate and when we think giantly, we usually the human think negatively. So I think culture always preserves some good values in the society. I think the fourth one, special to my culture, for example, we are from sort of tribal societies. In the society where usually the family is dependent on the young male. The young male has to go out to earn money and to run the house. So in certain families, it was very common, but it is also disappearing very rapidly. That in some family, if the family have no sons, no brothers and brothers, what they do, that one of the girl voluntarily decide to be a male of that family, to be a boy of that family. So sometimes such female wear like clothes like male, or sometimes she doesn't wear a cloth like male or dress like male, but she started to behave like male. She work in the fields, because in my culture usually men work in the field. For example, plowing in the field, digging, or some hard works are done by a male. The female usually do works, but not so much hard works. For example, plucking the plants, cutting the crops, they help the ladies, but not the very hard works. But such female, if she decide to be male of such family, which is short of sons, the female develop her physique also as strong as male and started to work like that. But this is also disappearing very rapidly. So I think these were some beauties of our culture. And for such female who consider herself as male of the family, the people were not thinking in the way the people think to a person like female. So they give much respect to such lady so that she can work in that separate society. I will use the word separate because in those societies we have not so much free mixing of male and female. We have pre-mixing at occasions like the occasion of death ceremony, the occasion of some marriage ceremony and special occasions. But generally we have different schools for male, female, different colleges for male and female, and different sitting rooms for male and female. So this is not really mixed society. But if a female consider herself as a son of the family, not a girl of the family, in such family, usually the people respect such a lady from the core of their heart. So these were some beauty of our culture which are disappearing, and due to those we have some problems as well. And those cultural values I think should be preserved. Well, and then we have the role of religion in the culture as well. So most of the time the religion teach about positive role in the culture. For example, if I take Islam as a religion, so Islam always talk about the equality in humans. Islam always talk about peace in the world. Because the word Islam, salamati, salama, is from peace. And when we say assalamu alaikum in our culture, that is a permanent part of our culture. Like your greeting words is buongiorno or grazie mille or grazie or something like that. We say assalamu alaikum. What does it mean? It is Arabic word. We say to the person, you are in complete peace from my side. So this is the meaning. So Islam is the religion of peace, and it has given many more positive things to our culture. For example, from religious point of view, if I say these drugs and the drinkings, which are the things, for example, which are injurious to health, they are forbidden in Islam. So sometime in cultures, for example, in Pashtun culture, it was quite common to grow, for example, opium plant. And the Islam always forbid people not to grow such drugs which are injurious to health. And actually it was the effect of religion, though it was the intervention of government organization and implementing agencies as well, to stop people from opium cultivation, etc. in the past. I don't remember that era in my area when the people used to grow opium and the cannabis and the drugs like that. But my forefather says that on one side the government was banning these things, but on the other side the people were taking some inspiration from religion as well. That it is haram or it is forbidden in the religion, because no one can pray in Islam in the condition of insane condition, in the condition of after using these nasha, these drugs. So Islam clearly forbid people, and there are the verses of Holy Quran that innamal khamar wal maisar min amal shaitan, that these drugs and these things are actually the actions of evils, and a Muslim shouldn't do that. And then the Prophet Muhammad also talked about this, that everything which change your mind and you don't decide bad and good, it is known as drug or something like addiction, and it is forbidden in the religion. So religion has always played a very positive role in our Pathan culture. But sometimes interpretation of religion by some people in a wrong way has created problems as well. But it's not actually the fault of religion, but it's actually the explanation, the bad or the misinterpretation or the bad explanation of the religion which has created problems. So I think, as far as the Pashtun culture or the Pathan culture is concerned, this culture is in quite harmony and very good in parallel to the religion of Islam. For example, most of the traditions in Pashtun culture who were there before Islam as well. For example, putting scarf was in the Pashtun culture. Not to hide everything, I think. I'm not a religious scholar, sorry, but as far as our literature I have read, the putting or closing hairs, it was tradition of Pashtun culture. And the same is the order of the religion as well. So it was naturally, the Pashtun were quite Muslims before Islam, and when the Islam came, so there was no problem due to that culture. For example, if we take example of Hindu religion, so it was very difficult for Hinduism due to their culture to embrace Islam, because there were many things different of religion and culture. But in Pathan culture, there were so many things which were quite close to the Islam or the religion, and that's why the people embraced Islam easily. Well, actually, the Islam telling us to be very simple. For example, if I link it to the courses here in the University of Gastronomic Sciences, this approach of slow foods in Bra, for example, it's actually the voice of Islam. If I take in the other way around, for example, that Islam also say that you can live your simple life with your local resources in a sustainable way, and not to go for high-fi life, to get more cars, to get more food, to have simple food, and you have to eat by half. When you have half hunger, you should live, and you should completely clean your dish, your plate. And this is the saying of Islam, for example. But we are not following certain things in Islam. For example, there are some things, I will say, bad in traditions as well, which are in contrast to religion. For example, if I take the example of my tradition, where we are not following Islam, but we are following traditions, and not the traditions, but the continuity and this show up. For example, in my culture, the people cook so many food, and they show that they can cook a lot of food, they can feed a lot of people. So when they feed people, so in our culture, the people usually bring more food. For example, if a guest can eat less food, for example, say 200 gram, the host usually bring 400 grams, with the thinking that if I bring little food to the guest may think that they have no enough food. So to just show off, I think this may be a bit demerit of the culture, that culturally we want to show more things to our guests, to offer more food. But Islam says, if we take religion and tradition together in comparison, the religion says that you have to bring the food a little more, but not that much more, that the guests can get fully with that food, but not that much that the food then go waste. So here there are certain tradition which need some improvement, I think, regarding the food consumption. And then there are different versions of our traditions in different areas. For example, if I take the Pashtoon culture in Pakistan, in the lower areas, not in the mountainous areas, in the plain areas, the people are ready to give some part in of their property. For example, if parents distribute their property among the sons and daughters, so they give according to the religious rules. For example, 2 parts to son and 1 to daughter, because she has to get married and get something from husband as well. So our religion says in the lower valleys fulfill these, but the people in mountains, they usually don't give much part to the daughters. They leave most of the property to their sons. So again, I think this is a little demerit of our culture, though they don't do this with the bad intention. They give more things to son, but they make them sure that they will help throughout their life to their sisters, for example. In every bad and good situation, they have to give some money or some other help to their sisters. So again, they compensate in one way or the other, but in this case, it goes a little bit different to religion, because religion says that you should give part of your sister or your daughter at the time, and later on you give some things, so it is just some extra you can give. But in Pathan culture, usually in the mountains, the people keep a little bit part of the ladies with themselves, which I think need a little improvement. But this is my idea. Maybe this is not the cultural flavor. Yes. So there is something mixing, yeah. Yeah, so like other religion, Islam also definitely after Prophet Muhammad, Islam is the recent religion, the latest one. It has in hierarchy as well. For example, in Islam after Prophet Muhammad there were followers of Prophet Muhammad in Arab world, and we Muslims say that four of them were the best friends of Prophet: Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman, and Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhuma. And then there is Shia and Sunni sects in Islam. The Shia give more respect and they follow more with more, I can say, attention or more love the descendants of the last daughter of Prophet Muhammad. These are known as Ahl Bayt. Sunni also follow and love them, but in Shia sect they have a little bit difference in their belief that when the Ahl Bayt were killed by Yazidi in Iraq, so they always each year at the time of their martyrdom or their death, they celebrate those functions and they mourn on that. While in the Sunni sect, we silently celebrate. We don't hear to music and something like that on public television for 10 days. But we don't. For example, they beat Shia in the Shia sect. Shia Muslim they beat themselves, while the Sunni sect they don't do like those celebrations. There is a little difference, but yeah. And then if I take the Sunni sect to which I belong, we have different imams. For example, we have four imams: Imam Shafi, Imam Hanbal, Imam Malik, and Imam Abu Hanifa. They are more or less in the same era, and they follow one verse or the other verse said by Prophet Muhammad. So there is not that much difference. In few things, a little difference is how to pray, where to put the hands and something like that. Some sects say you have to put hands over there, some say over there. Some say when you go to the sajda or to the ground during worship, you have to do like this. And while some go without this, just put the hands like this and go without doing this. This is known as Raful Yadain. So this is a little difference, and but these are minors. So the people don't care. For example, we have a collective prayer. So if an imam praying from one sect, Imam Abu Hanifa, and all the followers are from another sect, for example, so the imam go or the leader go without doing Raful Yadain, but the rest of them can do the Raful Yadain. So this is not a big deal. Then in later stages we have different noble people. For example, if I talk about Pakistan, in Pakistan we were having Hazrat Data Ganj Hajwiri, who was preacher of Islam, and so many people from other religion, from Hinduism, Sikhism and Christianity, embraced Islam by the hand of Data Ganj Hajwiri. And before that there was Shah Waliullah, another one. And in the later stages we were having, for example, in Pashtoon culture, if I take examples, there are so many, but I remember I don't have a big study on this. But yeah, for example, Rahman Baba was very noble person. He was Pashto poet as well. And these are, yes, the names in the Muslim and Pathan culture. And there are, for example, Khushal Khan Khatak was another poet, though he was not a big religious scholar, but he was a very good writer. He wrote books of poetry and books of prose, which were translated to many languages. And he was at the same time ethnobotanist, you can say, because he was talking about the medicinal plants. And in the religion, for example, if we take, there are so many plants mentioned in Quran. They are talking about the uses of plants. There are so many plants mentioned in ahadith or verses of Prophet Muhammad. And there are a lot of work done by these noble people in the history. Because in the modern era, we have the Western type of education or the global type of education, I will say. Schooling, more or less the same, the primary schooling, secondary schooling and tertiary schooling. But in the old ages, you know, in the whole world, there was no education system. Those were the priests in Christianity and those were madrasa in the Muslim world. So the madrasa were doing both this world education and the religious education for the life hereafter. So what the madrasa were doing, they were doing research as well. So the scholars of that time has written very good books on ethnobotany, physics, botany, etc. But later on, this demarcation, the madrasa remains for religious knowledge and the schools remain for this world knowledge or present era knowledge or modern science knowledge. And this create a gap also. This create gap between religion and between science or culture, which sometimes make problem even in those cultures, whether to listen to science or whether to listen to religion. And I think there is a need of introducing the scientific knowledge in madrasa and madrasa knowledge in schools, so that the people can get to know about each other and about different types of educations. Let me summarize this whole story that in living in mountainous area in a very unique culture and going to schools in cities and then getting education in the modern world, for example in UK, it opened so many doors for me. For example, on one hand, in my professional life, I'm doing some scientific stuff. For example, to making relationship between vegetation and environment, or vegetation and culture and their effects on each other. But on the other hand, I'm also looking towards the cultural differences in different valleys and the impact of those culture on these natural resources and vice versa. And I'm also looking at the same time the relationship of culture and religion as well. And in all these stories and things, I can conclude in a way that, for example, there were different stages in the modern world. For example, before the First World War, you know that that was colonial war. Most of the European went to the world and conquered the world, and they gave something good to those colonial states, but they also gave something bad. For example, they I will not use the word destroy, but I will use the word reshape. They reshaped their cultures, original cultures, so this was something bad. But they gave in turn some good things as well from their culture, the Western world. On the other hand, during that, after First World War, the world became bipolar. And the people were thinking whether to go towards Germany or towards other Europe, or so this was the era of something confusion, I can say. But after the Second World War, the world got another form, that is globalization, that everyone is becoming same. So on one hand, there are certain things positive, that okay, it may take us to the equality, but on the other hand, it's it's destructive. For example, it leads us to the things in quantity, not in quality. For example, there is something like capitalism is on top from one side and communism from the other side, and both have their own merits and demerits. So in this scenario, keeping our cultural value has become very difficult. But one thing is common in both capitalism and communism, that they are taking us towards to the quantity, more money, more food, more income, and maybe not more people, but the areas like I belong to, where the culture and the religion demand for more people as well. So then bringing an equilibrium is quite a tough job, but it should be done. For example, in the case of organic food and slow foods, if I conclude in this way, it is necessary for good health. For example, with the fast food, we have fast life, and we reach to our death, I think, maybe I'm right, very soon, very rapidly. The people are dying at the age of 16, 70, for example, in my place. But I remember that my grandfather and grandmom were having age more than 100 years. And I think they were utilizing the organic food and the slow foods, and that were actually due to their culture, the cultural things they were using, and they were having very good life, a quality life. So I think we are getting quantity, but we are losing quality. And we have to make some equilibrium between, because we can't ignore quantity, but we shouldn't ignore quality as well. So we should make some equilibrium. And I think it's the message of so many religions as well, that you have to be in equilibrium. For example, I think each religion talk about the equilibrium, and if I talk about the Islam as a religion, it say that khairul umuri awsatuha, that in every walk of life, middle is the better. Middle is the better. So I think we have to choose middle, and we should focus on quality. So I think this is the era to come back to the quality from the quantity. I will put it in one sentence like this. Yeah. So in food, I like my village. For example, if my mother, she's alive, when she prepare this yogurt lassi, this mixture of yogurt with handmade stirrer, not with juicer, this modern juicer, and when it give rise to some butter, I like that butter a lot, and this is my favorite food and my favorite taste. And I always used to tell her, whenever I go from my workplace to my home, she should prepare butter for me, please. So yes, I want to go back to the quality from the quantity. I have a lot of food but no taste. Yeah.